You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. Just for point of clarification, there are quotes from Nick Saban attributed to SI. I'm assuming you did speak with Nick.
I did. Yep.
Oh, okay. How long of a conversation did you, if you don't mind me asking, how long was the convo that you all had?
Just overall or about the scheduling?
Yeah, just overall.
Yeah, overall. It was supposed to be 20 minutes. It probably went 30 to 40.
Okay, so it was a long convo that you had. I was just curious for context.
Mm-hmm.
Would you sometimes things don't translate into text or whatever it may be, but how would you describe Nick's general feeling about the schedule?
Well, I think his general feeling about the 9-game format is good. I think that he wants the SEC to play more games. He has said that for a while. I think he thinks it's good for the conference to play, more games. I just think he has an issue looking at all the 3 permanent opponents for a potential 9-game schedule. I think he has an issue with Alabama's 3 opponents. And I think that's where the real issue lies with him. But overall, I think he would actually prefer the SEC to go to 9 games, which are 9 games, which isn't a given, by the way. It's felt for a little while like that's the way things are leaning. But man, this issue is one that really has divided a lot of the room, and it'll be interesting over the next probably 6 weeks or so. We should know a lot more.
What are the objections to going to 9 games?
Well, I think there's probably 3 main ones. Number one, first, it's an extra loss for half the league, right? Somebody's going to lose that game. And in that game, that 9th extra conference game conceivably would replace a non-conference game against an FCS or a group of 5 opponent, which, 80 to 90% of the time probably is a win for that SEC team. So you decrease half the league would decrease their win total by 1. Decrease by 1, and their loss total will go up. So there's that. That's number one. I think number 2 is a lot of these teams, Matt, have scheduled, LSU's in this group too, I believe, has scheduled several non-conference games down the stretch here. They'd have to buy those games out or move them. It doesn't seem like a big deal. Like, what the heck, right? I mean, during COVID, we moved a lot of games around and all this stuff. But COVID was what they call, I forgot exactly the term, cataclysmic event or something like that, where you could get out of a lot of contracts. You can't really do that here. Now, some non-conference contracts have a clause in there. If the league number of league games change, you could get out of it. But it's potentially millions of dollars to buy out these non-conference contracts. So there's that. And the last thing, Matt, is just the uneven schedule. When you have 9 league games, you have 4 at home one year, right, and 5 at home the next year. So you have an imbalanced schedule in the first year that you do this. You're going to have, half the league have 4 home games and half the league have 5. That's a big deal, Matt, because of money. Of course, a home game can pull in, $3 to $5 million in revenue.
Let's go back to the permanence for a second. By the way, do you have a feeling, Ross, like, do you think ultimately the 9-game schedule wins out? That's what we'll end up seeing?
I mean, it just seems really split. Okay. I was asked to put a gauge on it, and I said 55-45, okay. 9 games.
Wow.
But I have no real confidence, in betting either way here. It is an issue that has, maybe last spring you would have seen it be 8-8 if there was a vote, like gun to everybody's head. You have to vote. Maybe right now it's 10-6. I don't know, for 9 games, or 9-7, but it's close.
Wow. And is it just a majority wins, or does there have to be like a 3/4 majority?
From what I understand, I believe it's a good question, but from what I understand, I believe it is a majority.
Okay.
It's a majority of the presidents. And, ultimately the timeline of this thing is, the the presidents meet this week, in Nashville. I don't think there's going to be a decision there because, again, they're divided. And there's not going to be some kind of split vote, as they say, whenever these presidents get in the room and vote. It's unanimous, no matter what it is, right? So they're not ready to do that yet. So the ADs will meet, I think it's Rosemary Beach down on 30A. They meet later this month. I think they'll come up with a recommendation there, pass it on to the presidents, and maybe April, May, there'll be an more official presidential vote on it.
Ross Dellenger is with us from Sports Illustrated. Let's go to the three opponents. So Brian Kelly even spoke on Monday and said, he knows LSU's three, right? So are the three permanent opponents determined already? Like, if they go to 9, this is how it's going to be, or is there still wiggle room there?
I would expect that there's some wiggle room, but I think, Brian did Brian Kelly reveal the three?
Yes, A&M, Ole Miss,
yeah.
A&M, Ole Miss, Alabama. Which, Ross, this past summer at media days, my impression was it was going to be A&M and the Mississippi schools. So the Bama thing does surprise me a little bit. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, I think the Bama thing goes back to, two things. That's the most watched game in the last 10 years in college football, right? Hard to not play that one every year. But really, it goes back to the balance, and I got into that in that story. They're using a 10-year metric of success, to kind of balance out the schedules. So they're using the last 10 years of conference standings. If you're in the top half, then you get 2 of your 3 permanent opponents are also in the top half. You get 2 tops, and you get 1 in the bottom. If you're in the bottom, you get 2 bottom half and 1 in the top. So that's where, you give LSU 2 Mississippis and A&M. The 2 Mississippis obviously in the bottom the last 10 years. A&M is barely in the top. Then that would cause a little bit of an imbalance there. So that's probably where the switch came from. I think, to get back to your original question, I think that each school has a pretty dang good idea of who the 3 are that they would get. And I put out a list on Friday. It's I would guess that if that list isn't 100%, it's 90 to 95% accurate. From talking to schools, especially since it's been put out there. There's been some feedback that I think it's pretty accurate, of the list of 3 permanents for each. So there could be some wiggle room, but it's not going to be anything significant.
A couple more for you. Ross on Twitter, at Ross Dellenger, of course. You can read stuff at si.com. With Nick and Alabama and the 3 that they draw, Ross, I would argue that is the toughest draw of the 3 permanents. How can that happen since the league office is in Birmingham and Bama gets all the breaks?
Nick Saban would like to know that answer too. As you said to me, how did they come up with that? But then he did answer his own question, right? And he told me about the 10-year metric of success. Well, I think I think the way the league is doing this, Matt, is first of all, they're making these based on primary and secondary rivalries. And with each SEC school pretty much has a primary, and most of them have a secondary. And so it's pretty easy to do, right? Alabama's really easy. Auburn, Tennessee, it's the third one for all the schools, pretty much the third permanent where you get in a little issue. You have a little issue figuring that out, right? And I think they had to, number one, everybody wants to appease the network. You want to play the most watched college football game the last 10 years in LSU and Alabama, for one. For two, Alabama and LSU in both of these cases, their third opponent, they needed a top. They needed someone in the top half of the league to balance things out. And that's what happened. Now, what Nick's point was about Tennessee, right? Tennessee is, I think if you go back and crunch the numbers, and I did of the last 10 years in conference standings, they're in the bottom half, and they're not even close. So I think it's the bottom half of the league is in winning percentage the last 10 years is Missouri, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and then it's Tennessee, and they're tied, I think, with South Carolina for winning percentage. Now it's Nick Saban points to is that Tennessee has been a lot different the last year or two, right? Under Josh Heupel, you got NIL. They have obviously pretty big collective there. They seem to be on the way up. And his point was, Alabama has 3 teams that are in the top 10 or at least in the top 10 consistently right now.
Yeah. This is so good. It's so good because Alabama's getting screwed. Like, it's so good. This is beautiful. Like, I don't know why. Like, I'm okay with LSU playing Bama because Bama's getting screwed. This is really good. I'm really for it. All right, so you think we'll have a decision sometime in the spring?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably. The spring meetings are in late May. It would surprise me if we don't have a decision before then, but certainly by then.
Okay. Any other plans to talk to Nick Saban and see if he does any more complaining about how tough his schedule is? It's really good.
I'm sure he'll hold a press conference ahead of his spring practice coming up, and I'm sure he'll be asked about it at some point. So I'm sure he'll have more to say. The reaction to that story was basically summed up in your reaction.
So good. All right. Ross Dellenger, Sports Illustrated. He's on Twitter at Ross Dellenger. Give him a follow. Thank you as always, Delly. We appreciate it.
All right.
All right. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.